what has been your experience seeing the evolution of startups, specifically in Hyderabad and also at the national scene? How have you seen them evolve?
So first of all, thank you, Suchetana, again for having me. So I think T-Hub was conceived back in 2014, and T-Hub was conceived as a public-private partnership. So we had essentially the government of Telangana, then 3 academic entities, which is IIIT, ISB, India, the Indian School of Business, NALSAR, the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, and then 5 local champions of industry, Scient, Tech Mahindra, and a couple of others, right? And we were set up as a Section 8 not-for-profit, primarily focused on 2 themes. A, how do you promote and support early stage entrepreneurship? And B, how do you drive innovation? Right? So when we started, obviously the startup movement itself across India was in relatively early stages. So, data has it that we had about 50 startups in Hyderabad in 2015. Right. Now I'm happy to tell you that we have close to 7,000, right? And in terms of value creation, in terms of jobs, in terms of funding raised, etc., I think we've come a long way in terms of, well, obviously there are other cities which have an early mover advantage, right? And we keep getting compared sometimes favorably and sometimes not favorably to other cities. But I'm happy to say I think we've made substantial progress. But of course, the job is still not done. There's a lot more we can do.
But massive strides in 8 years, if you just look at the span. A lesser known fact about T-Hub is that you incubate a large section of foreign-born startups as well. When you analyze them, which are the countries which are sending the maximum number of startups to be incubated here?
So I think when you think about building an ecosystem, right, obviously there are multiple elements which you have to look at. So obviously funding is one, market access is another, and so on. So in that context, what we always felt is one of the key value adds which T-Hub can do is to help our startups which have global ambitions to go out, right? And during that process, when many of our startups are looking to go to, the developed markets like the US, UK, Australia, Germany, etc., then during our conversations with similar, like-minded peers, our counterparts in those markets, they also came back and said, listen, like you said when you kicked this off, 1.4 billion people, 4 trillion GDP, blah, blah, all of that. So there is an opportunity for those startups which want to come into India, right? And I think all the entrepreneurs here in the room this will resonate with them that when you build solutions in India, by choice, most solutions in India have to get built frugally, right? So I don't want to use that word jugaad, but we build very frugally. And so whatever solutions you build today have global applicability and can be sold at affordable price points, not just in India, but across the world, right? So in that context, you've had a lot of companies from outside which are looking to come in here. So at this point, as we speak, currently as we speak, we are incubating with 2 separate government entities from the UK under, there's something called Innovate UK. So we have now 10 clean energy startups which are looking to come into, to leverage India for both as a market, as a base for talent, and so on. We also have startups in the space sector and the semiconductor space which are looking to come in. We've just finished a program with a couple of universities from Australia. They have, about a dozen of their startups. Then about 4 or 5 months ago, we had a team of about 15 entrepreneurs from Armenia, right? Came in here. And we've done similar programs with Korea, with Germany, with Japan. Essentially, we run this under a program called T-Bridge, which is essentially a program for these startups to understand the regulatory framework in India, to figure out how to build teams in India, to figure out how to literally do business in India in terms of identifying the right partners, getting their messaging, their pricing, building out small teams to start with. So we do that fairly, and it's working both ways.
Yeah.
You know,
In a recent interview of yours, I was reading that you mentioned that you were concentrating on incubating more and more startups in the AI space. Do you think Hyderabad, which you mentioned, just had 350 startups in 2014? Do you think that the space here, the ecosystem here is developed to a point where you have so many startups in the AI space or the deep tech space that you can look at incubating them and focusing on them? And which are the other sectors apart from AI that you're looking at?
So I'll answer the second question first, and then
Right.
I'll come back to the AI part. So I think obviously in Hyderabad, healthcare, anything to do with healthcare, medical devices, given our standing as the largest pharma, we are the pharma capital of India and arguably the largest vaccine producer of the world in Hyderabad. So obviously there is a, predilection to healthcare and life sciences. The second is of course space tech. So some of you will be aware of companies like Skyroot and Dhruva, which are homegrown, and they've become, among the top 5 space tech companies. So we've been actively working. In fact, we just recently launched a program with ISRO and Amazon to incubate and promote. We want to make Hyderabad the space tech capital for startups.
Okay.
Right? The third area of focus for us is defense. We again have a large number of, we have 12 defense labs here. We have a large supplier ecosystem in Hyderabad, etc. And we are at T-Hub, we run with the Government of India a program called IDEX. So we already have close to about 37 startups in defense, doing some amazing work across a wide range of domains in the defense space. So defense, aerospace, healthcare, space tech, and obviously there will be a fair sprinkling of enterprise tech companies, SaaS and solutions like that. So broadly these, not to say that we don't do others, but obviously historically Hyderabad has not been seen as strong, for example, in the consumer tech space. But we think emerging areas, one of them which we are actively looking at is sports tech, right? Because that could be, I think, with so much happening in the sports area, I think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, IIT Madras recently inaugurated something called CESA, just to incubate sports tech startups.
So coming back to the first question, the AI part, I think what we are doing, in fact, on the 7th of next month, we still have a few hours to go for the next month. So we are launching a Department of Science and Tech funded AIML Center of Excellence. It's happening on the 7th. And we already have now about 58 startups in AI. Already incubated, already in the process of incubation. And what we are trying to do is, obviously one challenge for many of these startups, obviously one is the talent challenge. The second is access to compute and compute resources. So both of these are being provided for. And then obviously also get them in terms of working with clients for market access. So these are what we are doing. So I think at this point of time, everyone is talking about AI, and obviously there's a lot of talk about foundational models. In reality, I think India will find it hard in that space given the nature and extent of capital required. But there are plenty of other opportunities in AI, which is what we want to capitalize on.
So I'll come to the other aspect of this, which is funding. And we're continuously writing about the funding winter. While India has remained to some extent insulated, do you think that the scene is very different from early stage startups, especially the ones in T-Hub? How has the funding scene worked out in the last 1 year?
So overall, I think if you see in the last 1 year, right, obviously, if you look at the headline numbers, funding has dropped off dramatically. But again, when you start slicing it and looking at what's happening, so I think where funding has dried up has been typically in the Series D's, E, and
the
so
late
on.
stage startups.
The later stage startups, because I guess all investors are now looking at path to profitability and lots of those interesting questions. But early stage funding is still happening. It's happening, and I think investors are being a little more choosy, a little more careful. Earlier it used to be the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
To some extent, some investors last year had the joy of missing out. Okay.
Right.
And now I think they've get to a point where you're starting to see some rationality. I think in terms of valuations and things like that.
Right.
And good ideas even today get funded. Right. I see that happening pretty much every day. That even today, there is a lot of liquidity in the market. Our investors across India are now sitting on close to $7 billion of cash of thing. They're looking for good ideas. Obviously, everything kind of stays the same, which is basically good ideas, good problems to solve, interesting solutions, differentiated solutions, quality of the team, execution, and all of that. And I think in a way, this whatever happened is welcome. Because you're now seeing some sanity return.
Right.
And like they say, when the going gets tough,
the tough gets going.
Yeah.
See, in the years leading up, especially the post-pandemic years leading up to mid-2022, we, as you mentioned, FOMO, that completely distorted the market. Now that there is consolidation, there is joy of missing out. For early stage startups, which are the sectors which are seeing maximum interest when it comes to investors? AI, I'm guessing, is one, simply because I understand it from your focus. Is space tech the next one?
No, so I think all the sectors which I said we are trying to do, so obviously healthcare, right? B2B, particularly in SaaS, I think is still interesting. Right. Even though there, I think to some extent, right, one of the challenges most enterprise customers will tell you when they talk to them, there are just so many solutions out there.
I was just coming to that, yes. Yeah. When we look at funding data that we get from the few sources that you have, it is again the retail-facing sectors which continue to be the darlings of investors. So e-commerce will continue to be on top. But are you seeing investor prudence coming in to back a really innovative idea if it is in deep tech or enterprise tech?
We are seeing, definitely. So there are now, we are starting to see the emergence of, what you call deep tech funds, which are early stage, which are willing to back startups which are at TRL 2, 3, 4, which traditionally they would not, right? One. And I think also you're now starting to see a little more, I would say, a little more patient capital starting to come in. We are not yet where we should be, but I think some of these areas, right?
Yeah.
Particularly in areas like healthcare, right? Healthcare to a smaller extent in space and defense tech. So for example, in defense tech, if you look at what has been done thanks to, the Atmanirbhar and all of that, there's a lot more buying happening now from MSMEs and startups and all of that. And also the process of procurement has been simplified. So some of those stringent criteria on net worth and balance sheet size and all of that are starting to, be removed. Right? So I think it will happen. The funding winter, I think again, lots of global factors at play as well. But I think investors are sitting on money. Yeah. And even today, like for example, on Monday, we had a VC, and I'll take the liberty of naming the VC. We had 100x VC come in here, and they did a speed dating format. So they had 3 teams, but they had about 100 startups pitch, and about 12 of them have now moved to the next stage for deeper evaluation. So there is money.
Yeah.
Of course, at the end of the day, the quality of the idea, the execution, all of that matters.
You mentioned a very interesting phrase, patient capital is back, you said. Do you see it at the PE level, or are there the angels who are become more patient, or you think venture capitalists have also become more patient? Because if you look at the Indian scene for the last 3 years, all the problems that we face with startups blowing up, finally, if you analyze them, the problem lies at the investor's door, right? Because they have been very insensitively pushing these startups to chase volume and forget path to profitability. When you mention patient capital, do you mean those things have been taken care of? Investors are now ready to back a company which shows perhaps more maturity to sustain beyond the first 2 decades?
See, many of these investors now have done follow-on funds.
Right.
So they're at the early stage of funds. So some of the challenges was, let's say if there's a fund which has a life cycle of 7 years, right? So typically the first 2-3 years is when you invest, and then after that you get into the cycle of trying to find exits. So if you get in now, if somebody raised money in 23, for example, they still have money which has to be deployed.
Right.
And I don't think any LP would be happy at fixed deposit rate of returns.
Right.
Right? So they'll want the money to be put to play.
Right.
Right? So I think it will happen.
Okay.
Plus,
Yes,
some of
go.
the government has talked about setting up an innovation fund
Yes.
and all of that. Hopefully, when the new budget comes in,
We will see
we'll
some,
see
of
some
it.
more action.
Yeah. T-Hub, coming back to T-Hub, it's structured as a non-profit. So what are your revenue sources? I asked this because, again, I read in that interview of yours that you are also planning an expansion. It was a big figure that was mentioned, 40 crores. So what are your sources of revenue? How do you manage that?
So I think we have had, obviously, we are a Section 8 not-for-profit. And for us, the capex for the building, the T-Hub building, which was about 400 crores, that our government supported us. So we are a lessee for the government in a sense, a government body called Telangana State Industrial Infrastructure Corporation. So capex is taken care of them by them. Operating wise, we generate our own cash flows. We do, since physically we have the largest incubator, so we have at this point of time, the building is set up for 3,200 seats. So currently we've made about 2,100 seats operational.
Yeah.
And we get close to about 46-47% of our income on a monthly basis is from rental, what I call the landlord business.
Right.
Right, where you don't really have to do a lot. Then about close to 36-37% comes from the programs we do with corporates. So as I said, our focus was twofold. One is entrepreneurship and second is innovation. So today a large number of corporates and pretty much, so for example, just to throw a few names, Maruti Suzuki, Renault Nissan, Boeing and so on, right now we work with about 30 plus corporates. They work with us when they are looking to engage and build what we call the open innovation ecosystems. So they have specific problems which, they have a choice. They can either build it themselves, they can buy it from this thing, or they can partner with a startup and co-create. So the part we play is in the partnership part. So we run challenges, help them identify startups, and literally help them co-create solutions for deployment, right? So obviously, startups bring energy, bring a fresh perspective, right? Do not have the bureaucracy of working with a large company, side of thing. So that is about 35% of our income. We've deliberately kept our pricing for our startup programs low because we recognize many of these startups initially are bootstrapped sort of thing. So typically, for example, most of our flagship programs, which are anywhere in duration from 4 to 6 months, they'll end up paying about 80,000 rupees, right? And we charge that. We could actually waive it, but we charge because there has to be what we call a seriousness fee. So.
Okay. We at Outlook Business, we have an annual report that we come out with. It's called the Outlook Business Outperformers. It ranks, we do it in association with ISB and Accenture, and it ranks top startups, top states to startup, as well as top cities in India to startup. Interestingly, Hyderabad top scored in human capital. How do you respond to that?
Because we have lots of high quality academic institutions, right, in Hyderabad. So we have the Indian School of Business, we have an IIT here, we have IIIT here, and several other good engineering colleges, one. So, and I think particularly IT, they say 3 things flow in the veins of people in Hyderabad.
Right.
One is blood, second is real estate, and the third is IT.
IT.
Right?
You'd be very surprised with the rest of the data. The thing is that while, of course, you have institutes of repute over here, but that was not what led to your human capital score being so high. It is because you were the preferred choice of city when it comes to qualified techies wanting to work in. That was the reason why you...
Because I think one is to do with infrastructure and quality of life. Without taking any digs at our neighboring states, I think it's fair to say that you can actually get from one location A to location B in Hyderabad, generally in a reasonable length of time. So.
Absolutely. We all know which city you're talking about. A few startups that you would want to name who T-Hub has mentored and you see them doing great work. Maybe your top 5 favorite.
Sure. So I think I'll start with the space tech startups. So one company we are very inordinately proud of is Skyroot.
Right.
So Skyroot, so for those of you who've been following the space sector, the space sector opened up 6 years ago, 2018, when the government decided to open up space. And as you know, yesterday or a couple of days ago, they also said we'll now allow 100% FDI in space. So Skyroot was the first Indian private player to launch rockets. The first one they did was in November 22. They launched a suborbital rocket, and now they'll do, the next one is an orbital launch. That's going to happen in, I think, by June or so. They've also raised a large amount of capital. They've raised close to about 100 million plus. They're incubated at T-Hub.
Yeah.
And I think, much to admire about the company in terms of the energy, solving a very difficult problem, right? And how they've gone about executing it, very, very frugally, right? So that's one. Second one would be Dhruva. Third one would be, Dhruva is again a full stack.
Right.
So satellite company, build, launch, and operate.
And backed by absolute marquee investors.
Third one I would talk about is Adonmo, which is an out-of-home display type of thing. Again, done exceptionally well.
I'd spoken to the founder once. You had rejected him some 3 or 5 times before finally accepting him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fourth one I talk about is somebody in the sustainability space. 2 companies actually in the sustainability space. One is Banyan Nation, which is in the business of plastic recycling, with not what we tend to associate plastic recycling with bottles, of which there are many, but these guys are really focused on, for example, in the hospitality sector, when you go and stay in a hotel, all of that. So they are, they've also raised recently a large amount of money. And the fifth one I would say is Recycle, which is also in the sustainability space.
Right. When you mentioned infrastructure about the city, there's one more data point that came out of the same research that we did, which showed, this is a survey that we did across a few thousand startups, across a few sectors in India. We asked them that if not in the city where they are currently functioning, which is the other city they would like to move to? Hyderabad was one of the top choices. So clearly I think it shows that infrastructure of the city is playing a role, but how much of a role does T-Hub play in this? In Hyderabad becoming a choice of perhaps the next city to adopt, moving away from the city of birth?
So I don't want to sound immodest. Okay, so
you can.
Temper what I'm going to say. I think, so 2 parts, right? I think first of all, I think the quality of infrastructure, the general quality of life, not to forget the food.
Right.
And the fact, I think, I'm sure there'll be many people here in the audience, many of whom who've lived here for many years and can't speak the local language. So we are very accommodative,
I'm still waiting to hear when you'll say T-Hub and MSR also plays a role.
No. I think...
Good morning everybody. I'm honored to welcome you for the first panel discussion of this EdTech Summit titled Tech Tools and the Future of Examination Process. As we embark on the journey to explore the transformative potential of technology in education, it is very imperative to explore into one of the fundamental pillars of the education system, that is the examination process. My name is Amit Shanbag, and I'm the Associate Editor with Outlook Business, and I'm delighted to serve as the moderator for this insightful discussion. Today, the traditional methods of conducting examinations are being reshaped by innovative technological solutions. From online assessment to AI-driven monitoring system, technology is revolutionizing how we evaluate students' learning outcomes. However, with these advancements come many opportunities and challenges that need careful consideration and discussion. We have a team of eminent panelists today to talk about these issues. So firstly, I would like to start the discussion with the lady on the dais, that is the Vice Chancellor of Maharani Cluster University, Dr. Gomati Devi. Good morning, ma'am. How are digital tools reshaping the examination process, and what are the key benefits according to you if you compare that with the traditional methods?
Already many universities have taken up digital valuation. It saves the time first. The examiner who is supposed to come for this